Hello, my name is Richard Pinsker, and I want to read to you some of my paper, German Remembrance Culture and the Media, a Work in Progress. Despite significant strides in remembrance culture, post war German films in West Germany, United Germany, have not fully come to terms with the history of the war crimes, and atrocities. Exculpative, exculpatory narratives, coupled with an increasing emphasis on German victimhood, have evolved and persist in the media sphere that frame the war as a tragedy that the Germans suffered rather than one they themselves caused. I'm going to start off by discussing the movie called The Murderers Among Us from 1946. It was the first major post war German film that dealt with the recent past. And again, this was Germans were at a bare subsistence level, and they appeared as victims. Enter Dr. Mertens returning home from the war. He returns to Berlin and finds his battalion commander Bruckner, who ordered the execution on Christmas Eve 1942 of Polish men, women, and children who were hostages. Bruckner is the sadistic Nazi perpetrator. Mertens is the decent to good German who objected. Interestingly enough, anti-Semitism is not mentioned, nor whether this group contained Jews. Mertens wanted to shoot Bruckner, but then decides he'll take a chance on a demand for legitimate state justice. Merton did not consider himself having great responsibility. He thought himself a Mitlau for a follower. And in fact, the producer of this film, Wolfgang Stauter, was also considering himself a Mitlau, for, even though could be a perpetrator too, because he worked for the Third Reich in the movie industry during the war. The Jews and the Holocaust are not part of the movie script. They are not there at all. They're omitted. And this could be an example of parapraxis or failed performance as a result of the trauma. The movie seems to have a paralysis about it, and such that it cannot discuss the trauma of the Holocaust material at all. A big change happened in the 1950s. Films decided that it was important to show duty, resistance of good noble Germans to a war largely replaced by bad deeds by SS Nazis. This helped the Germans by way of using black and white films and tune down their technical, nebulous memories of the war into simple, moralistically simplistic cliches that persist today. The bad actors then were the ones committing the war crimes, and incompetent Nazi officers and leaders were sending armies into disastrous campaign with huge numbers of German soldiers ending up in prisoner of war camp if they were not killed. Soviet victims are not represented in these films. Another type of film was the Kriegsfilm, because Germany needed heroes. They rehabilitated Stauffenberg, who for a while, after his attempt to kill Hitler was considered a common traitor. He was rehabilitated into becoming a elite traitor, not doing anything for personal gain. West Germany was rearming, and Stauffenberg was upgraded and deemed this new personality, and became a true heroic patriot. And therefore, as there was a need for a moral military tradition at this time, Stauffenberg was rehabilitated. Since he was deceased, no further questions could be asked of him. These questions might have been awkward. Germans were also portrayed as, in the 1950s, honorable soldiers withstanding extreme combat, such as the hastily trained boys defending an unimportant objective in the bridge in 1959. The boys are left leaderless when a sergeant who was going to send them home at first contact was killed. The kids decide that they're going to fight to the last man and the last breath, mimicking the patriotic speeches that Hitler admonished them with in the past. The whole group is killed, condemned by their devotion to the ideals of National Socialism. And this may explain the fanatic resistance at the end of the war, even in hopeless and futile situations. Konrad Adenauer, the chancellor from 1952 to 57, pushed film directors to produce war films. The government at that time was financing the film industry, and this was the right time to give some impetus to rearmament. The film 1959, Dogs Do You Want to Live Forever, depicts an idealistic officer on the Eastern Front. Uh, Most of the Germans are shown as honorable and brave soldiers who are victims of National Socialism. However, historians have noted that this division of soldiers belonged to a group that was involved deeply in war crimes. Historical amnesia as an exculpatory narrative can be illustrated in Das Boot, 1981, directed by Wolfgang Petersen, which describes a submarine that seems German only in name only. He was trying to absolve the average German soldier with a specific view to an American audience. The sailors on board did not have adequate planning and resources. All will die except the sympathetic war correspondent. The crew appear as if they're individuals, not regimented Nazis. The Holocaust and crimes on land are not even mentioned. The entire ship's company does not really speak German, as production was entirely dubbed. Viewers were sympathetic to the fate of the doomed sailors because they were innocent and apolitical. Therefore, Das Boot remained, long after the war, a lingering symptom of the collective denial of the past many years after World War II. Shortly thereafter, President Ronald Reagan made a controversial joint ceremony with West German Chancellor Kohl at Bitburg Cemetery in 1985, where SS soldiers were buried. Reagan remarked how many were fanatical followers of a dictator and willfully carried out his orders, and how many were conscripts forced into service during the death throes of the Nazi regime. Both Kohl and Reagan chose to maintain the historical ambivalence, another exculpatory narrative, towards German guilt, and just for the sake of that, the matter was let to rest. Ronald Reagan was a well-known film actor and likely was very familiar with Das Boot. The 2013 series Unsere Mutter, Unser Vater, Generation War, serves as an example of how German media belatedly only partially acknowledged the history of war crimes, atrocities, and anti-Semitism. Historical amnesia and gross distortion of daily life in wartime Germany set the tone and tended to avoid the difficult questions that must be asked if Germany is to fully come to terms with its difficult past. The miniseries followed 5 friends, one of them who was Jewish, from mid-1941 until the end of the war. The series was supposed to introduce a new phase in processing the collective trauma incurred by the Germans in World War II, especially this young generation. The problem here is that this series is made as a docudrama, and it looks very realistic. It mixes almost newsreel quality scenes with regular movie scenes, and it tends to make the viewers feel as if they are involved with them in these historic events. The viewers feel they're actually connecting empathetically with the past. It's an invitation to feel history. The film is asking viewers to empathize with the grandparents and the parents and grandparents, or even great-grandparents by now, that they are trying to connect with. This may systemically manipulate remembrance culture. Each of the 4 non-Jewish protagonists become perpetrators. They were well socialized in Nazi ideology. Despite their good nature, they sell their souls by committing brutal deeds. Not all the worst deeds that these soldiers actually performed or shown in the movie because the producers felt that if the worst deeds were shown, they could not connect with the parents and grandparents of the soldiers. Scenes of autotelic violence are toned down, and Germans committing rape are not shown, though these acts have been well documented and have been committed by so-called decent Germans. Uh, the Nazi officers and SS officers that are portrayed doing evil deeds stand out. These officers are easily identified so that they stand apart from the protagonists. They look so evil that no current German would dare identify with these villainous characters as their grandfather or great grandfather. The film series makes little mention of German anti Semitism. It does render the Polish Home Army as a brutally anti Semitic organization. This caused a vehement reaction in Poland for a perceived revanchist interpretation of history. Concentration camps are glaringly omitted in any discussion. The Poles end up being the most virulent anti Semites. Poland did have its own issues with anti Semitism, but Germany is again showing an example of parapraxis, the gross omission of the German role in anti Semitic actions in the Holocaust, while putting gross blame on Poland, show the paralysis that Germany exhibits when the traumatic issue is brought up. Unfortunately, instead of the urge to understand better the origins and driving forces of the final solution, there is an increasing predominant interest in bringing the matter to a close. This view considers the final solution the fate of the Jews to have been dealt with, and only superficially and reluctantly. The debate can move on to German suffering and victimization using this logic. Even in the United States, many people learn countless lessons of history from television and the movies. The producers of this docudrama determined to tell how it really was. This did not actually occur. The proliferation of novels, films, and television programs about the Nazi past suggests that this period of German history continues to resonate and connect with uh, the those born long after the end of the war. The viewers seem to feel they were actually present at these events when they watched this docudrama. They feel empathy for the perpetrators. A huge chance has been lost to discuss outright condemnation for the actions of the Third Reich in a large group that is all too eager to avoid an open discussion of this topic. The series was seen by 7.6 million viewers on average for the first 3 weeks it was televised. In essence, the large audience received a fanciful reconnection to its ancestors. However, a chance for a critical inquiry into a very troublesome past has been missed. Germany knows that it committed a terrible genocide. It has taken responsibility for what happened and continues to address as a nation group culpability and accountability. However, for popular media, despite improvement, it is still a work in progress. Thank you very much.